I am happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation. 50 years ago, a great American, whom symbolic shadow we stand today, signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long nights of their captivity. But 100 years later, the Negro still is not free. 100 years later, the life of a Negro is sadly crippled by the mangling of segregation and the chain of discrimination. 100 years later, the Negroes live on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. 100 years later, the Negro still lingers in the corners of American society to find himself an exile in his own land. So, we come here today to dramatize a shameful condition. In a sense, we come to our nation capital to cash a check. When the architect of our republic wrote the magnificent words to the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, they were signing a promissory note in which every American was to fall here. This note was a promise that all men, yes, black men as well as white men, would be guaranteed the inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is obvious today that America has defaulted on this promissory note insofar as her citizens of color are concerned. Instead of honoring this scarred obligation, America has given the Negro people a bad check. A check that has come back marked insufficient funds. But we refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. We refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds in the great vault of opportunity of this nation. So we come here today to cash this check. A check that would give us upon demand the riches of freedom and the security of justice. We also come and stand on this hollow spot to remind America of the fierce urgency of now. This is no time to engage in luxury or cooling off or to take the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. Now is the time to make real the promise of democracy. Now is the time to rise from the dark and desolated valleys of segregation into the sunlit paths of racial justice. Now is the time to make justice a reality for all of God's children. It must be fatal for our nation to overlook the urgency of the moment. This sweltering summer of the Negro's legitimate discontent will not pass until there is an invigorated autumn of freedom and equality. 1963 is not an end, but a beginning. Those who hope that the Negroes needed to blow off some steam and now will be content will have a rude awakening if our nation returns to business as usual. There will be neither rest nor tranquility in America until the Negroes have been granted their citizenship right. The whirlwind of revolt will continue to shake the foundation of this nation until the bright day of justice emerge. But there is something that I must say to my people who stand on the warm threshold which leads into the palace of justice. In the process of gaining our rightful place, we must not be guilty of wrongful deeds. Let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred. We must forever conduct our struggle on the high plains of dignity and discipline. We must not allow our creative protest to degenerate into physical violence. Again and again, we must rise to the majestic heights of meeting physical force with soul force. The marvelous new militancy which has engulfed our Negro community must not lead us to distrust in all white people. Many of our white brothers, as evidenced by their presence here today, has come to realize that their destiny is tied up with our destiny. They have come to realize that their freedom is inextricable bonded to our freedom. We cannot walk alone. As we walk, we must make a pledge that we shall always march ahead. We cannot turn back. There are those who are asking the devotees of the civil rights, when will you be satisfied? We can never be satisfied as long as a Negro is the victim of this unspeakable horror of police brutality. We can never be satisfied as long as our bodies, heavy with the fatigue of travel, cannot gain lodging in the motel of the highway and in the hotels of the city. We cannot be satisfied as long as a Negro basic mobility is from a smaller ghetto to a larger one. We can never be satisfied as long as our children are stripped of their selfhood and robbed of their dignity by stating for whites only. We cannot be satisfied as long as a Negro in Mississippi cannot vote and a Negro in New York believe there's nothing for which to vote. No, we are not satisfied, and we will not be satisfied until justice rolls down like water and righteousness like a mighty stream. I am not unmindful that some of you have come here out of great trials and tribulation. Some of you have come fresh from narrow jail cells. Some of you have come from areas where your quest for freedom have left you battered by the storms of persecution and staggered by the wind of police brutality. You are the veterans of creative suffering. Continue to work with the faith that unearned suffering is redemptive. Go back to Mississippi. Go back to Alabama. Go back to South Carolina. Go back to Georgia. Go back to Louisiana. Go back to the slums and ghettos of the northern cities, knowing that somehow this situation can and will be changed. Let us not wallow in the valley of despair. I say to you today, my friends, even though we are faced with the difficulties of the day and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evidence that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the son of former slaves and the son of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the contents of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day, down there in Alabama, with this vicious racism, with this governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification, one day, down there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every hill and mountain shall be made low and the rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This is the faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to heave out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling decor of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. This is the day when all of God's children will be able to sing with a new meaning. My country, 'tis of thee. Sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my father died. Land of the pilgrim pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. So let freedom ring from the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire. Let freedom ring from the mighty mountains of New York. Let freedom ring from the highest Alleghenies of Pennsylvania. Let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado. Let freedom ring from the crevassed slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from the stone mountains of Georgia. Let freedom ring from the Lookout Mountains of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi, from every mountainside. Let freedom ring. And when this happens, when we allow freedom to ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men, white men, Jews and Gentiles, will be able to join hands and sing in the word of the old Negro spiritual. Free